Hello.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, Josh. You are really quiet today. You are muted.
Yes. Hi, Thomas. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Eloise.
I added your agenda item already, so
Okay, great.
I just realized we have no meeting agenda items for next year already.
Yeah, the SCORE folks, their product manager is going to present to us in mid-January. So I went ahead and penciled her in there, or she penciled herself in.
Yeah, which actually brings me to my agenda item before the actual agenda items. December 21st, January 4th. I think we should ask people who's actually really going to join over holiday season. I can tell you that I won't join December 4th. I mean, the 21st might work, but we should really see whether we have any agenda items there. Because otherwise I think people can get their time in there.
I think we could simply cancel these two meetings because
Yeah,
I think not many people will be there.
Yeah, I don't want to cancel the 21st one, but it might just be a much smaller round due to the items we have on publishing some of the work and some of the organizational job would carry water tasks. It might be very small round at this meeting. That's why I'm leaving it on the calendar right now. Yeah, but I think overall we could make it shorter. All right, we are 4 minutes in. That means we can start because obviously the meeting is recorded for everyone to watch afterwards. As soon as we can actually do it, which we will discuss right now, because the challenge right now is, and I filed already an issue that we don't have access to our Zoom account, or we will have access to the Zoom account, but not to the email address that's linked to the Zoom account. So I filed a ticket for this already. As soon as I get access to that email address or distribution list, I'll put the videos then later on online. Okay, first action item today is Captain project updates. Florian.
All right, yeah. First of all, can everybody hear me?
Perfect.
Perfect. All right, then let me just share my screen. And we're gonna jump right into it. Yeah, hello. My name is Florian. I'm one of the maintainers in the Captain project. And today I would like to give you an update on what we have been working in the last 2 months, which is the Captain Lifecycle Toolkit. If you like what you hear, or if you are interested in getting to know more about this project that I'm gonna show you today, feel free to reach out to us, for example, on the CNCF Captain channel on Slack, or follow us on GitHub, either in the main Captain repository or in the Lifecycle Toolkit repository. All right, so let's jump right into it. So today I want to talk about the Captain Lifecycle Toolkit and how we are planning to kind of enrich the GitOps approach. So for that, maybe let's first start with the points that we particularly like about GitOps and what we plan to and how we plan to build up upon those points. So first of all, one of the main points is that GitOps is great because we have a declarative state. Sorry, I just need to move my Zoom window here. Okay, because we have a declarative description of our application that we want to deploy, and also in a versioned way, because, for example, we can create new tags whenever we want to release a new version into our environment via GitOps. Then second, things are reconciled automatically. So as soon as a PR to the GitOps repository has been merged or a new tag is being created, projects like Flux, for example, take care of really taking this configuration and applying it into our cluster and trigger the application rollout. Then it's the single source of truth. Everything is transparent and in one place, so there are no multiple systems that might host different configurations for our application, and everything can be tracked via the commit history. And finally, this is pretty much the natural way to deliver apps in Kubernetes, right? Okay, so those are the 4 biggest points that we have identified, which make GitOps really great. But of course, with each possibility, there's also maybe a challenge or 2. So these are the points that we have identified. So first of all, when deploying something, we actually also want to make sure that the environment that we want to deploy in is actually ready. So for example, if the required resources that we need for running our application are in place, or if there are no open issues within our environment, because you wouldn't necessarily want to release a new version in a broken environment. Then we would like to, or it's not always that easy to tell if all prerequisites are in place. So for example, if our application depends on some external service, to make sure that this is actually available before we can safely roll out our application. Then also, this is particularly true for more complex microservice applications. it's not always easy to actually get a good overview of what is currently happening during the deployment, and to really make everything traceable, to see if, or to determine, or to find any root causes for any problems that might arise during the deployment. And finally, of course, after everything has been rolled out, we would like to make sure that our application is running properly. All right, so those are kind of the challenges that we would like to address with the Lifecycle Toolkit. And now let's see how we actually plan to do that, or actually what the vision for this project is. So first of all, one of our main goals is to make the Lifecycle Toolkit usable with minimal configuration effort. So we don't want people to have to read through pages and pages of documentation to make use of our project, but really enable people to get started as easily as possible. Then we obviously would like to support GitOps aware pipeline-less delivery, and we also want to be able to work with all the existing frameworks and technologies in the GitOps realm that already exist. So we want to cooperate with them. Then we also want to make it easy to integrate external tools during our deployment process, for example, to trigger certain actions during the different phases of the application deployment. And maybe one of the most important goals is we want to really provide deep insights into your deployment process, so you get a really nice overview of what happens during the application rollouts and also after that. And yeah, basically we want to be cloud native and application aware. And we are doing that by kind of using the KubeBuilder operator framework and making all of the Kapton Lifecycle Toolkit entities available as custom resource definitions that can in turn be applied using kubectl apply and live next to the other manifests that might already be there in a GitOps repository. So I've also already teased a little bit the use case of observability. So to achieve that, we have made Prometheus a first-class citizen, or any kind of metric provider first-class citizen in the Kapton Lifecycle Toolkit. And if you choose to deploy the Kapton Lifecycle Toolkit in your cluster with our release manifest, we also already provide a custom Grafana dashboard, which provides you an overview of Kapton Lifecycle Toolkit related DORA metrics, which are, for example, the number of the succeeded application deployments, the deployments that are currently ongoing, the number of failed deployments, and the time between application deployments. And also, and I'm going to show you this in a short demo, we are providing the traces to the application deployments that we are exporting using the OpenTelemetry collector in the Lifecycle operator. Exactly. So as you can see here on the right side, the traces will then kind of depict how the lifecycle of an application deployment looks like and what is being actually executed during that deployment. All right, and yeah, as the next point, let's see, or maybe before I show you how you can actually use it, let's see how we are working on a conceptual level. So as I said before, we are using custom resource definitions for all of our configurations. which can live next to all the other manifests of your applications. And basically, yeah, we can work with Flux, Jenkins, Azure DevOps, or pretty much everything that in the end does a kubectl apply on your cluster. And when you do that, Keptn hooks into the deployment via a mutating webhook that first checks for any incoming pod whether the related namespace that you want to deploy into is actually enabled for making use of the Keptn Lifecycle Toolkit. And then based on our custom resources for the Lifecycle Toolkit, you can define, for example, different pre-deployment tasks that should be executed before actually placing the pods into your cluster. And you can do this by easily customizable functions. So we provide custom resources where you can either just put Node.js code into a Keptn task definition or refer to something that already exists on, for example, on a GitHub repository. Then we also enable post-deployment steps where you can, for example, as you will see in the demo, trigger a Slack notification to be sent after your application deployment has been finished. And in addition to that, we also, since I said we wanted to make Prometheus a first-class citizen of the Lifecycle Toolkit, you can also define evaluations that you want to execute by providing a Prometheus query and a target. So in this example here, we want to verify that the number of available CPUs matches our criteria before continuing with the, there is a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, by post-deployment, do you mean as soon as the pod is up and running, or do you mean when the pod is finished?
As soon as the pod is up and running, exactly.
Thanks.
All right. Yeah, and then at the end, when all the workloads of an application have been deployed, we also want to enable users to do a post-deployment task for the complete application. So that's how the Lifecycle Toolkit fits into the kind of bigger picture. And now let's see how to actually enable it. And as I said, we wanted to make this as easy as possible. So the way to do this is to add Keptn SH Lifecycle Toolkit enabled annotation to the namespace you want to enable the toolkit for. And in your deployments, you can either make use of the Keptn Lifecycle Toolkit annotations that we provide, so like Keptn SH workload, app, and version. But instead of, if you choose to not do that, we also support the Kubernetes recommended labels like app, part of, and component annotations. So the Lifecycle Toolkit will also work with those. But for example, if you would like to also make use of the pre and post deployment tasks, that's where you would have to use the Keptn annotations like the Keptn SH / pre-deployment tasks and post-deployment tasks. So that's what you would add to, for example, your deployment manifests. Then if you have a multi-deployment application, you would also need to provide a Keptn app custom resource, which basically provides a list of all the workloads that you would expect for this application to be deployed. And finally, if you want to make use of tasks and evaluation, that's how you would define those. So for example, for the evaluation, we have our evaluation definition custom resources with the supported Prometheus queries and the evaluation target. And for the Captain tasks, we provide the Captain task definition custom resources where, for example, you can either just put code inline into that, or as you will see in the example now, you can also point to a source file on, for example, a GitHub repository, right? And now I would say, let's jump into the demo. So for that, we will deploy our beloved Potato Head. I think you all know this, but basically it's a microservice application containing of different body parts of the potato. And in our example, all of its extremities, like the arms and the legs and the head, are dependent on the entry service, which is the body. And in this example, we want to use the Captain Lifecycle Toolkit to make sure that the entry service is available before we actually schedule the pods of the other services, right? And yeah, this kind of highlights the workflow that we want to show here. But yeah, maybe let's have a first look at the manifests that we're going to deploy. So here we have defined our Captain application, which contains all of the workloads that we would like to have deployed into our cluster. So we have the left arm, left leg, and the entry service that every other service will check before it's going to be deployed. And once the complete application has been deployed, we also want to send out the Slack notification. What else do we have? Yeah, so maybe, yeah, here is the task definition for the Slack notification. So as I said before, here we are using an already existing source code file that lives on GitHub. And this then just requires the Slack token to be available in the secret it's referring to. And then hopefully after the application will be deployed, we're gonna see a Slack notification informing us that our application has been deployed. And what else do we have? So first we're gonna try to deploy version 1, and I think I already spoiled a little bit of the story here, but this evaluation will indeed fail, because here we want to basically check for the number of available CPUs on our cluster to be greater than 4, which is not the case on my local cluster. But to see how we can then make use of the traces that we export in order to figure out what is going wrong during our deployment, let's try to deploy it anyway, right? So in this case, I will execute the make deploy 1. So this is nothing real fancy. So this will just do a kubectl create namespace and then apply the version 1 manifests using customize. All right, so let's go. And we can see all the manifests being applied. And if I go into the lens here, we are going to see our Captain app version instance, and it's currently in the pre-deploy evaluations phase. So it's currently checking for our environment to be ready. And maybe instead of browsing through all of these custom resources in Lens, let's see how we can make use of our Grafana dashboard, right? Let me just check if it's still working. So yeah, looks good. So as you can see here, we are currently having 1 active deployment. On the left side, you will see that succeeded. So I tried it out a little bit before I prepared the demo. And yeah, here we will then later see the average time between deployments, but for that we will need to have multiple attempts. And yeah, here you see a timeline of the active deployment. So we can see here that recently we started it. And finally here on this link, we will come to the trace. And actually now we immediately see that we have a problem in our application deployment. So is that big enough, or I will make it a little bit bigger. So here we see our trace for the Potato Head 1.0.10 version. And apparently the pre-deployment task phase was executed successfully, but we do have a problem here in our pre-deployment evaluation phase. And we can see that the pre-evaluation app deployment evaluation has been failed due to the number of available CPUs being not high enough, right? And yeah, let's try to fix that, I would say. So now I will try to deploy the version 2, which has a slightly different evaluation target. So here we're going for a more reasonable value of greater than 1, which should work now. And now we are going to deploy version 2. All right, and now the lifecycle controller will do its thing again. And yeah, so now we see that we have a new instance of our app version being our 0.1.1. And actually it is already in the app deployment phase, which means that the evaluation has been successful. And now we can see that we have a lot of pods pending there. And exactly, yeah. And indeed, the first one to be scheduled should eventually be the Potato Head entry, because that's the one that all the other ones are depending on. Or no, it's vice versa. That's, I guess, the power of the demo gods. But maybe let's go to the dashboard back again. Yeah. So now we can see that our deployment is still active, yeah. And we can also go to the trace, which now looks a little bit like a Super Mario level, but this will now make it easily traceable to see what has actually happened during the rollout of our application. So here we see the root span of the complete application, and we can see that the pre-deployment tasks have been executed, the pre-deploy evaluations. And after that, we have entered the deployment phase. And in addition to that, we now see all the spans for our individual workload. So we have the left arm and the tasks that are executed during that. And maybe let's find the entry service. Exactly, yeah. So maybe there was some issue in my lens, but indeed here we can see that the Potato Head entry was deployed, and that phase took around 45 seconds. And after that has been deployed, okay, I think I played around a little bit too much with the pre-deployment checks for the other services, but normally they should have checked for the entry service to be available and having reached the end of its deployment phase, and then they should have been actually deployed. All right. But I guess that's the rage of the demogods that I summoned here. But regardless, I think having this overview is a big benefit, especially when it comes to tracing back the deployments of quite complex applications. And also, let's check Slack. Yeah, exactly. Now, since the application deployment has been successful, we now have gotten the notification on Slack that our deployment has been successful. All right, and with that, are there any questions so far? All right, if not, I have almost reached the end of the presentation. So what we then also hope to provide with the Lifecycle Toolkit is day 2 operations. So for example, after the post-deployment checks have been executed, we want to provide enough data, for example, to the traces that you just saw, or by Kubernetes events that are sent by the lifecycle controller to then reach a kind of actionable state. So to provide external tools enough information to trigger any follow-up steps when, for example, one of the post-deployment checks has failed, in order to, for example, trigger a function or a workflow that tries to remediate a certain problem, or maybe switch the traffic to a previous version, or of course apply changes, or maybe do a revert the changes that we made on our GitOps repo before, in order to go back to a previously deployed version, or maybe to activate or deactivate some feature flags.
Could you just I just wanted to clarify that last one. What are you hooking into to React? Are you running health checks again? Are you relying on a post deployment? Because I guess the post deployment opportunity is finished at this point, so you're hooking into something else.
Exactly. In what we do in addition to doing the post deployment tasks, the lifecycle controller, maybe let's check it here. We will also send Kubernetes events with the lifecycle controller, and that can, for example, be picked up by a monitoring solution to see if, for example, one of the deployment checks has failed. Did that answer your question?
I'm not sure, because so I'm more wondering, like, after you run the first round, I guess, of post-deployment checks, after the pod is, I guess, up and ready, it sounds like you still do like day 2 monitoring, and it sounds kind of like I want to ask that you could run a kept in task definition on day 2 or day 3 in reaction to something. I just wanted to clarify what you're reacting to. So you said these events, that would be, I guess, they would report if your post-deployment check worked, but like on day 2 or day 3, long after your post-deployment stuff ran, what are you reacting to? Other events?
Okay, yeah, for the day or for the longer time after, currently we don't have too much information right now, but we are working on figuring out how to also provide these kinds of possibility. But with the current state of the Captain Lifecycle Toolkit, after the deployment has been finished and after the post-deployment checks have been done, that's right now what tells the Lifecycle Toolkit that the application is in its, let's say, reconciled state.
Cool. Yeah, that might be interesting because, continuous reconciliation, Kubernetes style, it might be nice to subscribe to future events related to the deployment that show it's degraded and be able to run a kept in task definition at that point. Just saying.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
Maybe if you can add what's planned for the roadmap is that since we can define some evaluations, we can continuously monitor from these evaluations. And as soon as your pod is not satisfying this anymore, then we can generate an event and then react on that. Yep.
Cool. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, and at this point we are almost at the end, so let's just quickly recap before we wrap up this presentation. So what we have now seen is application-aware deployment with vendor-neutral observability included. So we are exporting all of the metrics that the Lifecycle Toolkit gathers through the OpenTelemetry collector, which makes it easy for different monitoring solutions to gather this data and the traces. And yeah, as you have seen on the example of the Slack notification, we aim to make it as easy as possible to also integrate external tools. And I think these task definitions where you can just directly enter some code is a pretty good way to do so. But of course, we are also looking for feedback on how to further improve this. And as you have seen, the installation and the configuration is pretty easy. So we are relying on the Kubernetes recommended labels. And in addition to that, if you have a multi-workload application, you will just need to provide a simple Captain app custom resources referring to all the workloads that you want to have in your application.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, yeah, quickly share this one because then we have to move on, otherwise we won't get to the rest of the agenda points.
Okay, yeah, and if you want to get in touch, feel free to reach out, either on the CNCF Slack, on the Captain channel, or if you would like to contribute, we are of course always happy about feedback and are more than happy to look at any incoming PRs from the community. And with that, I will hand it back to Alois. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Again, the video will later on be available as well. And but I would also recommend that you maybe post also a link in the app delivery channel. Other projects are doing it as well with the presentation, where you can continue the conversation then as well. Oh, right. Next question. What's the purpose of interested party lists in GitHub?
I put this down. I got a couple things that are maybe chop wood, carry water kind of stuff. I could just go through them now if you want.
Okay.
So this first one is just, I was working with Robert, and so it was just clarifying what these are. If we should keep them, if they are useful. I actually related to them might need a mailing list. One of my questions is how can we've been trying to run one-off meetings in the platforms working group, and so I don't really have a way to let people know. So yeah, I was just wondering what those are for. You know, I could open an issue to discuss it if that's preferable. Just wanted to know how to receive it.
Yeah, I think the short answer is that this is more or less historically. I know for the GitOps working group, we created this before the GitOps working group was actually established. But not since they're now also working on Open GitOps, I don't see a reason why we would maintain them, honestly. This is more or less for collecting initial feedback on who is interested to join an initiative before we officially propose something, and to have an official way to actually do it, because in a Word document or like in a Google Doc, you would just throw it in there. In this case, the respective person has to file a PR. But I don't necessarily see that we need to keep maintaining them.
I also think so. The GitOps working group is established, and I think it has enough interested parties to be a working group. Therefore,
yeah, I think we could
remove the section or leave it. But
yeah, I would create a PR to remove it. We can send it out on the official mailing list to it. I mean, Scott's here as well, unless the GitOps working group and also Open GitOps won't have any issues with it. I mean, there's I think very little value. There was not that much value in continuing to keep it. I think that's this, because the second one was, I think, for the platform working group, right?
It's for the multi-tenancy work.
The
white paper.
multi-tenancy, yeah.
Okay, but I'll open a PR to remove these then. That would be
Yeah,
nice.
I think the only reason why it exists for the multi-tenancy one, because there is no official multi-tenancy working group.
Right. Right. And maybe that should stick, although we need to revisit that.
Yes, with some of the other work that we're doing. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I don't want to rat hole on that too much. The other couple things, I guess the second one, media, I have a PR, so I'm just putting that there if somebody could approve the PR, because we did change the Ouija platform's schedule. So I guess that's just general, be on the lookout for PRs. I'm about to ask you about a PR for the platforms Ouija, so just put that in there. And then Alois, like you mentioned, I just want to work with you on publishing the videos for the Ouija meetings.
Yes, and as I mentioned, I agree, we let this slip for a while, but now that we tried to relog in, we couldn't. That's why the videos are not there. And then we could maybe just do a voluntary round because it is some work to do some of the post-processing, to be fair. And I
Yeah.
want to just like evenly distribute it across people to get the videos done and then upload them. The upload is actually the easy part.
Okay, just let me know how I can help. Yeah, because that'll help us with the letting other people know what happened in the meetings. Okay, so yeah, I'll jump on now to the Ouija platforms update. I'm the lead for Ouija platforms. That's why I'm jumping in here. So we're working on this platforms definition. I think it's coming along decently nicely. You could jump in there and see where we're at. The goal of it is to inform enterprise leaders, enterprise architects, people considering implementing a platform or trying to make sure their platform, meets the needs that they want it to meet. That's what it's being written for. So kind of setting a definition for what a platform, means to us or means in distributed computing. Defining the key attributes and values. Well, the key values that we expect enterprises to get from it, the attributes that would contribute to those values, and then the list of capabilities, which I think is pretty interesting. The 10 or 15 things that are should haves or must haves in a platform. So yeah, we're working on that. We hope to publish something. I set a goal of late December, but it's more likely to be early January, I'm sure. Don't tell anyone I said that. Yeah, so we've been having meetings. We had a couple of meetings the past few weeks. If you want to join, we have one at 1900 UTC today. Just use the Ouija platforms channel in Slack, and you can find the Zoom invite at the top there. I wanted to just share this one last bit, which I wrote down, which I'm planning to chunk it up. So I just described kind of the outline of the paper. It's got like 5 sections, what a platform is, what the platform team is, the values, the attributes, the capabilities. I want to try to chunk that up and put it in like 5 docs, maybe in a directory, or 5 sections of docs in a directory in GitHub. So I'm bringing it up because I need PRs, need help with PRs there, PR review. Robert will help some too. But just FYI, I think I'm going to do something like that. So it'll be kind of like a spec, with these spec repos where it, automatically generates it. I'm hoping I can do that.
Could you do me one favor, especially on PRs? Could you also send it out on the mailing list? Because
what is the mailing list? Yeah.
There is a tag app delivery mailing list. I can share it in Slack. Sharing mail lists in Slack, it sounds kind of funny. Yeah, the only reason why I'm asking is because I think I'm maybe in a similar situation that a lot of people. I get so many notifications from GitHub that I have a very hard time like finding the needle in the haystack. But if you really need approval on these kind of things, if it makes it to my inbox, and I think also for the other maintainers, it might be easier. I just think that GitHub sometimes makes it hard to scale. If it's like really needed, I most likely read my emails more frequently than those other bits and pieces. So
Yeah, that's really good feedback. And that's I was actually wondering, like, how do I let people know that we're having this one-off meeting today? And I've been doing it in Slack, but I should probably be sending to this, I'm going to find the,
Yeah, I think you should.
mailing
Yeah, I
list
mean,
here.
PRs you can also send to to Slack, but I at some point gave up on following all the GitHub notifications that I'm getting. Honestly,
Yep,
it's
no problem. I'm noting that for myself. Use mailing list. So I'll try to, without being too verbose, I'll try to add a couple notes there when we're having a meeting. Too. Then I just wanted to share, I put in kind of what we're going to do next, or what we hope to do next after we get this platform's definition done, which is first, well, one of the things is iterate on it. And that's one of the reasons why I want to chunk it up and be able to get feedback. Whether that's end user interviews. We do have a couple people that said they would help me find end users to interview. You know, it's always kind of a challenge, but that's the next step. And then next level. So basically, this goes actually to that multi-tenancy thing. So after we kind of define especially the capabilities, I feel like, which are things like, well, API and portals and scenarios, but also things like databases and queues or observability systems or identity systems or development environments. There's a few different ones. Multi-tenancy is one of those that we identified, which is relevant to platform engineers, but probably transparent to like app developers. So we're not going to, this paper won't go much into that, but it will mention it. So like building on these lists and diving a level deeper into, it's actually the second thing here, the projects related to the capability. So like if we choose, say, development environments is a capability in a platform, then maybe the next step is to do a level deeper on here's all the development environments that we manage in CNCF, the projects that we have. If database, management or database provisioning is another one that, that could be one. So that's kind of the idea is like this paper gives us a jumping off point for going a level deeper in each of those areas. Yeah, and then the other thing I wrote down there, another thing that what's kind of emerged from our discussions there has been that platforms, there's two real features, I guess, or what a platform offers to the users, which is either kind of disaggregated capabilities, like I'll get a database, I'll get an identity, I'll get some compute space, a namespace in Kubernetes, I'll get a development environment. That's one kind of like individual services. But then we also have like scenario services, like what people call a developer platform is really combining like 5 or 6 or 10 of those capabilities into a complete template. So you'll get, a development environment and a database and a Kubernetes namespace and a Jenkins or Tecton or Argo pipeline or reconciler, all those things together. So that's another, we're trying to capture that in this paper. It's that's one of the things we're trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out, but that might be something to follow up on also. Like what are the kinds of platforms that people build? We've identified app dev, ML ops, but there might be others too. I talk about COTS apps. I just want to run Mongo's Helm chart in a cluster or something, or information worker. I want to run remote desktops or something like that, or Office or something. Yeah, so that's another area to go into next. Yeah. So I'll stop there. I just wanted to share.
Yeah, what's
Yeah.
your plan for the end user interviews? How do you expect to get them? Because this has in the past proven to like kind of be super hard.
Yeah. So a couple things I'm thinking of. One is that the folks from Dapper offered to help when we met in KubeCon. They said they had a couple people that we could interview. I've been sharing the GitHub template where we have kind of a question that people could answer, but clearly that's not working. People aren't just going to go do it, but we can use that as the foundation for the question. So like, at least when I talk to the Dapper folks, I'm like, here's the questions we're going to ask. Here's what we're going to talk about. Let me share that so you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, here's this. I'll put it in the chat for now. There's kind of the rough outline of what we want to talk to people about. But then so that's one option. Maybe I'll be able to get a little through my work. Red Hat, I definitely do get to hear sometimes. We get teams talking. We just had a couple companies the past few weeks talking about their platforms and what their experiences are. So I'm getting that way, but I can't share it so broadly. And then, oh yeah, I wanted to see about the user group research that CNCF has. And I was wondering if they would be at all helpful in that. Anyone have thoughts on that?
Yeah, they are helpful. I mean, they're very nice people. It's just that everybody has the same idea, so they should be helpful to everybody out there. I think that's kind of the challenge with them. But I would also like reach out to projects that you consider viable, because a lot of projects have success stories, use cases, because they also to some extent need and want them, and maybe those people are more willing. So if you have already done a success story with Backstage, I would assume that the same people would be willing to also talk to you, and that might also make a difference, actually talking. Like having like an actual interview, if possible. I know there's some work there, some additional work. Like just filling it out, I just briefly looked at it. I would not necessarily know what to write where, and I think it's easier to maybe walk somebody through those.
I'll also add that looking at the page, it's very knowledgeable for people that know what app delivery is, what the CNCF is, what's cloud native app, and then it's only talking about a team. And I guess that most of the time we'll interview platform engineers or DevOps, and they will talk about the whole company. Maybe we need to think about those areas. I can fill it up for my company and can set it inside Israel for a bunch more. But we need most of them doesn't know on those terms. So at least in that area we can improve.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely the live interviews are much more productive, but they take a lot more effort.
Yeah, I think you might have to run the first couple of them live, and I think then it's going to the guidance for people will actually increase. I think it would, for example, be easier maybe even for people to highlight projects that they're using. Like if we take the CNCF landscape, and also beyond, obviously, the CNCF landscape projects that they might be using, I might also give some good input. And just as a spoiler, I might have an interview partner for you, and B, some data on projects. I'm not entirely sure how much we can share, but obviously we at Dynatrace have data which CNCF products are used more or less together to build platforms, and how frequently they're used. I mean, they're based on our enterprise customer base. And we discussed it already internally. We just have to make sure that we only share what we're allowed to share, basically. I mean, you would most likely know as well for some of the Red Hat customers.
Yeah, it's a little tricky, right? I don't want to take people's customers, but what we're trying to get kind of an agnostic or technology neutral view to support the project, to support the open source.
I mean, it's great. I just know that it's like super hard always to get people to interviews. That's why I think reaching out to some of those projects that we consider being a substantial part of the platform will get you maybe to talk to a lot of people way more easily.
Yeah, good suggestion. So I'll be talking to the captain folks.
Yeah, well, we have all the security tooling as well. You have the GitOps working group. They have case studies.
Oh yeah, good call. GitOps.
Also the container registry. I think for container registries we have the same for Harbor, for example, Argo folks. So I think there's lots of opportunities of people who to talk to. It's still a lot of work. I mean, don't get me wrong, but they might have already good contact with some of those people.
Thank you. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, and that's a really good idea.
All right, we are almost out of time, and I want to give Scott, who patiently waited until we get to his point, also a couple of minutes.
Sorry, Scott.
Oh, no worries, no worries. I literally just wanted to let folks know about updates in the GitOps working group, but it's not a big presentation. It's really just to say that I'm super excited that Flux graduated within CNCF. It was like a really long and important process. I have more details of that for anyone that wants to know. And I should also say that that Argo had just announced that they graduated as well. So that is a good thing too. And I know Flux, on the Flux team, we waited we waited until CNCF announced this and coordinated it with CNCF. I don't believe that was the case with Argo, so I don't have as many things to point to, but I do. I think more information will be coming out soon about that. Yeah, it is an amazing week for GitOps, and there's a certification coming up for GitOps through the Linux Foundation. That is a collaboration between the CD Foundation and CNCF. So if anyone wants to know more about that, please reach out to me. They can also reach out to Brad McCoy. There are other people as needed, but that's just kind of what's happening in the landscape that's big. Of course, there are other things, but we can save the other updates for another time.
Yeah, I think that's exciting. So obviously now having 2 GitOps projects being graduated means that that GitOps thing actually might work out in the end.
Yeah, and I think in terms of industry wide, that's definitely the case. I mean, there are many different cloud providers and major organizations that have already folded this into their offerings, and others, you know, are working on it. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and yeah, great that we have also 2 projects there, like for like the CNCF, you know, like No Kingmakers have both products in there that also have also slightly different approaches and slightly different focus. That's amazing. Yeah, certification
Exactly.
also great. Yeah.
Yeah, that more information will be coming out about that soon. That's not even complete yet. It's really in the phase of creation. That's just about to start, and it was really great seeing, you know, in the within the scope of the GitOps working group. I suppose also it's important to like, you know, like say like Thomas and Florian. That was a great presentation. I know that Keptn it expands beyond GitOps, but it also connects there. So that's really cool.
All right, that was a pretty packed meeting then today, and we made it perfectly on time. Yeah, again, we will work on making this available publicly again. There is an open ticket with Service Desk that we need to follow up and to be better on this. Josh, I also owe you the details on the mailing list, which I will share with you because then we
No,
can
I'm
figure-
good. I got it.
Okay,
I'm
got
good
it.
now.
Mm-hmm. We also had in the past, but that kind of like slacked as well, like combining key updates around app delivery related topics. I wouldn't call it a newsletter because that would be kind of like overdoing it. But we might want to reinitiate instantiate this as well going forward to obviously drive more interaction, which I think are mostly happening asynchronously these days. Because we see people joining the meetings obviously when they have something to present or when they have time, but more obviously reading offline, given that we're all on tight schedules these days. All right, thanks everyone. Yeah, most likely not a meeting in 2 weeks. Very unlikely in the first week of January. But in 2 weeks, maybe it's just a smaller group is getting together to discuss some of the organizational topics and how to improve organizational efficiency there. So I'll put this in the agenda that this will be the main focus there. And with this, have a nice rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Honestly, fine.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Merci all.
Bye.